Hey guys, Sebastian here with another Cardano update. This time going over the weeks of June 7th and June 14th. Actually, probably by the time you're watching this video, the update of June 21st is out, so I'm sorry I'm a week behind. But if you've been following me on Twitter, you'll know that I've actually recently moved. So actually this video is taking place in Canada as opposed to before when I was in the States. And actually I'm going out to Japan, leaving today. And I want to make a quick update before I get on my flight. So let's try and do this real quick. So for the week of June 7th, there's some upgrades to the React polymorph library. This has been like ongoing, I think, for a while. And this is the library they use for the dataless UI, which is just upgrading a version of React, which is a library that they use. Next up, they're talking about a problem with the paper wallet PDF, and when they say that there's some problems preventing the PDF from being printed, they're mostly talking about old printers that don't have as much memory in the printer itself, and so they tried to like compress the graphics, use different format. They use a PNG instead of SVG to try and reduce the file size to solve this issue. Actually, later on, we're going to go over the patch notes of the fix, the hot fix for dataless. I'll mention this along with a few other issues. Yeah, they also decided to disable Node.js integration, the dataless, which is basically just the security thing, as I said. And I think this is because later on, or actually for a while, they've been talking about trying to do like a plugin for dataless. And I think they're probably like going through some stuff, trying to figure out how they can make everything safe, and so that might be related. Yeah, they've been doing some more changes to the Storybook integration. So Storybook is a way for you to test your JavaScript components to see how they look in an independent window where it's just like this component being visualized, and you can kind of do some testing on it and mock everything else out. So if you're interested in Storybook, you can look it up. There's like a few presentations on it. I think it's a library that's out there. Next up, they've been implementing some testing, which is always nice, and they made a change to the wallet receive screen, which I showed you guys in previous weeks, I think. What that look like, where you now have like a toggle button or something. For the wallet backend, they've been working a lot on the fees and UTXO, I think. One thing is that they used to have an option they're trying to implement called fees included, which is to say if you want to send, for example, 1 ADA, you could have like a check mark, so like a fees included. That means that the fees will be taken out of the 1 ADA you sent, as opposed to 1 ADA plus what fees are. And now they instead want to have, I believe, expense regulation setting, which allows you to specify if the sender or receiver pays for the fee. Yeah, next up they're talking about input selection and trying to work on that. So they've been working on like a spec for how to do input selection as an entirely different document from the wallet spec that's been out there, even though they do briefly touch on it in the wallet spec. I think I showed you guys in a previous video they have like a few different tools that they've been using to do benchmarking, simulations, all that kind of stuff. And if you're interested, sorry, about what they're trying to optimize exactly, I suggest you check out the wallet spec. In the very last section, it'll mention like some of the problems they're trying to solve, or rather optimize for. Next up is the data migration from the old storage to new storage. So there's a few different things for this. One is trying to reduce the size of the blockchain. So as you know, the way the blockchain now is stored is not too efficient. So I want to move to a more efficient implementation in a new storage layer. Along with that, they've also been trying to store metadata for blocks and transactions as outlined in the wallet spec, and they've been trying to figure out how to do all of that, and mostly like what they're talking about here is trying to do the migration So how do you migrate from people who currently have the wallet installed with the current blockchain, how they migrate to the new system when something gets patched? And they're thinking making everybody do restore, which might be programmatically the easiest way to do it. And it should be much faster, considering that the chain will be much more efficiently packed together. And they're talking about a few different things, so it should be less time consuming, and when they say it should be more precise related to checkpoints, so it's actually something from the wallet spec. So in the wallet spec, every block is considered a checkpoint, and the reason they have this is in case something gets rolled back, then they roll back to the previous checkpoint, which is the previous block. And so whenever you run the wallet, there's actually a list of checkpoints stored in memory, which I think is capped at 2,160 blocks. In case you may have to do a rollback, you can go back to the previous version history. So that's what they're talking about here. Yeah, and this is the asset state that they've been working on for a while. So if you don't know, asset state is a Haskell library that they've been trying to use. Asset is a database principle we've talked about in previous videos. But if you don't know, if you just Google asset and then asset state, you'll find both the concept of asset and the asset state library. You can look into it. For the networking, they've done some more work on that, trying to go from asynchronous request response model. This is to say, you ask for a block from a peer and then you wait for a response, to more possibly asynchronous model where there's a bidirectional channels for data and control messages. I haven't seen the code for this, so I'm not sure how far along they've gone into implementing it. We'll see if and how much speed up they get out of this. Next up, they're talking about KVM, previous version of Daedalus has launched. So this is all stuff that's old news compared to when this video is coming out. Yeah, and then they're talking about a bug with the Windows installer Daedalus that they've since fixed, and that's in the hotfix. And also, there's a problem with the login Daedalus, and I believe what this was may have been the log size getting too big and causing some issues, but maybe it's something else, I'm not too sure. And yeah, so they're saying that they're doing QA for the hotfix, but it's all released by the time this video is coming out. For incentives, they're saying there's going to be a paper submitted by the end of July and / beginning of August, and a conference in December. So I think this is actually pushed back a bit compared to a date they've mentioned in previous video, but it's still relatively soon that we should see the first version of this paper come up. And always looking forward to the conference in December, where hopefully they make this deadline and they're able to present it to a broader audience. They also mentioned that they're going to do 3 blog posts on the subject with videos. I think this is actually more extending for the average Cardano supporter that may not be able to read a research paper, because I think this addresses some of the common questions, such that how do we ensure Sybil attack resistance. And so this is probably the top question people have. So it'd be really nice if they had a video that explains how their incentive paper and delegation is set up to avoid these kinds of attacks. For Gogwin, basically everything's been making progress. One of the things that's been ongoing for a while is this Project Raken, which you might remember, it was a way to automatically generate test cases. And so they managed to spin up an AWS instance to dynamically search for problems in their code. They said they completed 5 million test runs. I'm not sure if they actually found any bugs in those test runs, but anyways, they did the tests, and hopefully this was a good use of the resources. They're also talking about the Stack Exchange website that they've been trying to launch. So if you don't know, they've been trying to launch a Stack Exchange, which is a Q&A forum for programming questions mostly, or just Q&A in general. And they've been trying to get one for Cardano testnets, and it's currently in proposal stage, and we need more people to commit to using it once it gets launched. So if you haven't committed to using the Stack Exchange website yet, go check it out, commit to it, and hopefully we can get this running sometime soon. Speaking of which, they've been working on the yellow testnet, and hopefully that will come out, I believe, at the end of July is the target date. And lastly, they're talking about how more of the version 1 API will be released in the 1.3.0 release of Cardano/Daedalus, which we'll see later in this video that they're getting close to starting the testing for this, I believe. So I think all the features should be done. So for the week of June 14th, they've been working in increasing the number of wallets, max number of wallets that a node can have. So actually, you may have run into this issue if you're a developer where there are only 10 wallets maximum. Now it's up to 20 by default as the maximum, and you can have up to 50. And I believe this is a configuration file that you can change once you download Daedalus, and so this will probably be in the 1.3 version. And so the reason that they picked 20 instead of 50, which is the maximum, was mostly for performance considerations. It's easier if they only have to deal with like at most 20 wallets instead of at most 50. But if you don't mind potential performance hit, I'm not sure how big it would be, then you can go to the config file and up that to 50. And the reason that 50 is the maximum is because I believe some other API, one of the wallet APIs they use has 50 as like a hard-coded number for like a pages or something. I forget exactly what it was, but it essentially made that 50 was the maximum that they could support. But they could eventually change the code to support more than 50 if they want to. Next, in Daedalus, they've made some changes to the about window that we'll see later on. I'll show you guys what it looks like, and they made some changes to the ADA redemption screen. So you might notice if you launch Daedalus, there's like a thing on the left that's like a ADA redemption. That was like for people from the ICO, and so because that we're kind of like beyond that stage, so they're taking the ADA redemption, taking it out of the sidebar and putting it like the top bar. That way it takes less screen, because I think most people don't really care about this option anymore. Next up, wallet backend. They've been doing some investigation on high hour traffic, which ended up being the logs. So actually, if you ran your wallet for a very long time and looked at the log file size, it was like growing pretty rapidly, and sometimes still like disastrous size. And so this is like one problem. The other problem is it would often like buffer all your writes, and that was taking a lot of memory also. And then like whenever it buffers a huge amount, and then it dumps it all to memory all at once, so you get an IO performance hit. So there's like a few problems that they've been trying to fix to hide how the logging works. They've been making more work on creating the wallet specification, doing the implementation, any other revisions on it, for verification, all that's basically what they're saying. And then this is still talking about the input selection policy that I mentioned that's also mentioned in the June 7th report. And so you know they're working on that. Along with that, I mentioned there's like the clock formalization and all that. This other thing is actually not related to IOHK, but one of the members of IOHK wrote like a paper called like Ghosts of Departed Proofs. I think it's like a 13-page explanation of a way to set up Haskell code to get some desirable properties about compile time checking. So if you're interested in Haskell, you can go check that out. Yeah, and they've been doing, so later on they mentioned they've been doing some cleaning and more testable code. And actually they've been doing a huge amount of refactoring code base, like moving stuff around, deleting old stuff, all this kind of stuff that you need to do occasionally as a software developer. Yeah, and they mentioned work on data migration plan, which I think is what I was talking about earlier, where they're trying to switch from the old storage system to the new storage system. And yeah, so as it states, I mentioned earlier, this is the way they're building the new wallet using this Haskell library and this concept. And if you don't know what apply block is, this is from the wallet spec. This is the function where, like, whenever you receive a new block, you call the apply block function. So that's what they're talking about. I see addresses and the apply block. For networking, they're doing more work on the bidirectional channels that I was mentioning earlier, and they're also talking about how to download chains of length greater than 1 and forks. And I think the reason they need to do this is in case there's like a rollback, and you may have to deal with like a rolling back to a different fork and this kind of stuff. But I haven't seen any code for this yet. For research and design, for decentralization, they're working on the delegation design document. Not sure, I don't recall them putting out a date for this. I'd have to double check on it, but this is separate from the incentive paper that I was mentioning earlier. This different paper that they're also working on. Yeah, and for the incentive paper, they're saying they're doing more work on it and more simulations. For the Gogwin update, they are mentioning that the chimeric ledger paper is submitted to the Journal of Financial Technology. So if you don't remember the chimeric ledger, this was released back in maybe March, something like that. It's a paper that was not too long, and there's a good forum thread about it. If you don't know, there's like a Cardano forums. There's a thread about this paper with like some good discussion. So if you're interested in this paper, you can go check it out. It was about how to manage UTXO and counting based model transactions in like the same system. The Reagan paper on examining the K framework. They said they went well compared to the CompCert tests, which is some tests that kind of like an industry standard test for, I believe, COS. I forget if it's C++ or C, but it's like some standard way to do some testing. So you can go check it out. You can just look up CompCert and you'll find which kind of benchmarks they use and how they set the benchmark for testing any bugs. And so, as they mentioned previous week, they had like 5 million tests or whatever generated by Reagan, and I'm not sure if they found anything so far with it. They didn't mention any in this week's report either, but hopefully it was worth the investment. We're talking about Plutus and Marlowe, which you don't know, these are both like a smart contract programming language that they've been working on, and they've been working on for a while. And I think these both these projects are kind of far from completion, which is why like they're saying Marlowe's in the analysis phase. They've got like a demo you can go play with. And Plutus are saying that they're working on core as well as smart contract modeling. I'm not exactly sure what they mean on this, but it may just mean they're working on like the core protocol. The only other thing I could imagine they mean by this is because Plutus is meant to also run the settlement layer, which part of the settlement layer is called core, and maybe that's what they're referring to, so I'm not exactly sure. Also, they mentioned they hired a product manager to try and help with smart contracts and developers to try and build up an ecosystem around Cardano, which is always good. And then for testnets, they're working on design work for the Yelp testnet that should be out in July, end of July. Next up, hardware wallets. So they're saying that they're continuing to work on the hardware wallets, along with stuff like the create new wallet API. I think this is actually like all old news. They just haven't announced it until now. but then like the stuff like the create new wallet API for the hardware wallets. This has been like a pull request that's they added to the code base a while back, I think over a month ago. So if you really want to, you can like go hunt down previous videos to see when I first talked about it, because I think I linked it in the description at the time. But so they're like still making progress on this, still working on it. So if everybody's looking forward to hardware wallets, it's like good to know that they're still like making progress. Next up is the Daedalus app platform. So I mentioned this a bit earlier. They're trying to set up Daedalus so people can write like a third-party applications for it, and they basically mentioned that they're trying to figure out how users will be able to submit their plugins is what I understand. And basically they want to develop a GSX versus a 2RGX compiler. That way people can write in GSX and then get converted to the RGX code. And I'll show you guys what that means in just a second right here. So this is like a GSX, which is like used by React. It's a way for you to specify like HTML inside your JavaScript, and then like render it replacing any variable names with the context. And so this is JSX. I think it's like JavaScript syntax something. I don't remember the exact acronym. I'm not sure if it actually been listed. Maybe not. Yeah. But RGX is reactive JSON, and it's a way for you to specify again kind of this HTML-like syntax, but instead it's specified as a JSON file. So if you don't know the JSON format, you can go look it up. But it's specified as a JSON file, where instead you say like, okay, this is my HTML component, these are the properties for it, and these are the children. So it's basically encoding all the HTML in JSON. But with this, you can also specify like some of this JavaScript stuff, and the components, all this kind of stuff inside the JSON. So this is RGX. For the code itself, they've been working on the public testnet deployment. So this is the Cardano SL testnet. So they've been working on this for like a month now, and we'll go into it more like a tiny bit later. Actually, I think I can just skip to it. Yeah, they've also added the Genesis data for the public testnet for Cardano SL 7 days ago. So they've been working on getting this SL testnet going, which has been like a moderately demanded feature for people trying to build stuff on top of the Cardano SL platform. They've also got the release 10.1 for Daedalus, which is already released by the time you're watching this video. And they mentioned a few different issues that were fixed. So hopefully if you hit any of these issues, those are all fixed now. And I mentioned this like what they were previously in the video. They made some changes in the font, which I think had two goals. One is like compressed up a bit. You can see like the amount of space taken is much less. There's less like a useless white space going on. I think it was also related to Linux kanji character support. So trying to get Daedalus to render correctly on all languages and fonts and operating systems. So there's kind of some visual changes. That's what I mentioned earlier, where the ADA redemption was moved up to the top bar. Also for the about dialog, it's now moved from its own window to like a window inside the application itself. That's just easier to deal with. This is what was mentioned earlier, where the max wallet count was moved to 20, but you can actually like go change this configuration if you want to increase it up to 50. And they're still working on wiring up the X509 generation utility. to the installer data list, which they've been working on this for a while. Next up, the release 1.3 has been snapshots. They took all the changes over the past while. 250 plus commits. I don't know the exact number. It got like cut off, but like quite a few changes. And so now I think they'll be moving towards the testing phase for all of this. Next up, the branch CHW is still in the works. So this is related to hardware wallets. So they're still working on getting all these hardware wallets set up. And so if you want to check out the progress, you can come check out this pull request. That's still a work in progress, but I mean, they've been working on these things for a while. So it's not just this pull request. Actually, there's like a few other pull requests. I think this is like one of the other ones. That's one of the fairly bigger ones that they've been slowly merging into this like a CHW branch. Next up, there's the Cardano faucet package, and this is like a faucet for the Cardano testnet that they've also been working on for a while, both on the code side and the Cardano SL. So now they have like a faucet filter if you want to check out the entire thing, and also on the DevOps side to handle like hosting the testnet and all this kind of stuff. Next up, they have a relatively small change for the Swagger account index. So now when you go to the Cardano API, it'll properly show the range for the account index, because it was kind of tricky that the range is possibly not what you would expect if you're not familiar with the way the various BIPs are set up for wallet implementations. So that's in the works. One thing that's actually created a long time ago but is finally merged now is documenting the Explorer front end, kind of how the folders are organized. So I know some people have tried in the past to like write their own Explorer, so they may be interested in reading this if they haven't already. Next up, they're using a persistent state in the data layer. This is the asset state we've been talking about earlier. It also includes changes for account-based pre-filtering. If you want to know what this pre-filtering is and why it's useful, it's an optimization method that's discussed in the wallet spec. So hopefully I'll actually have a video about the wallet spec going up at some point. I actually did a presentation on it, but we couldn't record it. So I'll probably do the same presentation again to an empty room and record it for you guys and put it up there. That way you guys have more context on like what is pre-filtering, all this kind of stuff. Similarly, also from the wallet spec is the transaction metadata persistent storage that they've been working on for a while using the Beam library. I've been talking to you guys about this for a while, and so this pull request is now merged. But yeah, so making progress on that. They made some changes to the mnemonic checksum from BIP 39. That doesn't affect any user-facing. There are no user-facing changes for this. This is just like a code refactoring to make the code simpler. And I think they also fixed the a small bug on wallets with word counts that are divisible by 8. Which do not currently occur, which is why the bug was not caught, from our understanding. And so this is mostly like a refactoring thing, does not affect any of the users. And then this cog formalization of the chapter 2 of the wallet spec is still ongoing, so I'm not sure what they're doing on this now, because I think the last review is 17 days ago. But hopefully we'll see this finished up sometime. And that was it for the past 2 weeks. Hopefully for the next week it'll not take me that long to get it out there. But as I mentioned at the start of this video, I am going to Japan, and I'll be busy there with vacation, along with going to the Japan blockchain conference, all this kind of good stuff. So yeah, my next video may be a little late. But if you want to stay up to date, you subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter, all that kind of good stuff, and you'll get all the updates as they come out.